To dive into this video, we're going to look at the attitudes seen throughout the movie Sing. To start, we're going to look at some judgments. Judgments are a big part of attitude. I've seen a lot of this throughout the movie. To list some examples, there's Johnny and his family. His family judges him for his musical passions. Then there's Buster. Buster's judged heavily by his best friend's grandma, who is this famous singer. She's very well known, and he really respects her opinion. So when she has heavy judgments and such about his theater and how he runs things, it heavily affects him. Many animals will judge each other based on their animalistic attributes and stereotypes. Some of the stereotypes seen throughout the movie are gorillas being burly criminals. There's elephants. They are seen as shy and gentle and smart. Then there's the mice. They are seen as sneaky schemers. And there's several more, but those are just brief off the top. To look at some textbook vocabulary in this movie, to start, we look at attribution error. Johnny's father labels him as sensitive and kind of implies that he's a little lazy because he's not pursuing the same interests of his family. And clearly that is an error, because that is not a valid reason to call him lazy or sensitive. And neither of those things are true, because he does not want to be a part of the crime side of his family. The next part of the textbook vocabulary I would like to hit is self-serving bias. And self-serving bias can be seen when Mike never takes accountability for himself, and he blames anyone but himself for anything that goes wrong. So essentially with the self-serving bias, it's just when it's an inability to take accountability, and it's subconsciously or immediately just blaming anything but yourself, because you see yourself as the wronged or the right. So whether it's a negative situation or a positive situation, you're going to put yourself in the positive seat, and that's seen a lot with Mike. The next thing you can see throughout the movie is prejudice. Forgive my pronunciation. Some characters show favoritism towards certain species and treat others worse. And this is a prime example of prejudice. Most of it is a species favoritism towards their own, and a judgment towards others for the worse, just because they're simply not the same species. However, there are different scales of this, because some of the characters who do have some prejudice, it's not necessarily towards any species but their own, but it's towards some of those stereotypes that I was mentioning before. Like, they don't like gorillas because they think that they're scary, they're dangerous, or they'll prejudice the mice, and they don't like mice specifically because they think they're sneaky. You can see this with the bears in the movie that Mike goes and gambles with. They immediately do not like Mike. They're suspicious of him because he is a mouse, and that's prejudice. To analyze the attitudes and Sing, I'm going to consider the social identity theory from Tajfel and Turner. Hopefully I said that correct. An article called Individual Group Discontinuity from the Differing Perspectives of Campbell's Realistic Group Conflict Theory and Tajfel and Turner's Social Identity Theory by Insko et al. In 1992, discusses social identity theory and explaining that groups have built-in bias, and that it stems from identity rather than their resources, and that just inherently being a part of a group subjects you to in-groups and out-groups and just more intense attitudes towards each other. Group membership alone causing stronger attitudes, stereotyping, biased judgments are seen throughout the entire movie, essentially, with Sing. But for some specific examples, we'll look at how characters stereotyped each other based on their species, like as briefly mentioned. First, Buster assumed that since Mina is an elephant, that she is shy and therefore not capable of being one of the performers, and that she must just be a stage manager. He does not for a second think anything else of what she wants to do, doesn't think she's capable. He just dismisses her and puts her in that category because she seems too shy. She seems incapable of the actual performing. The next example that would be great to look at is Johnny's family again. There's a lot of dynamics within that family that I'm going to look at throughout this series of videos, but right now the example I'm going to use is that his family tells him essentially that since he is a gorilla, that he must act like one, and he must be a scary, dangerous criminal like the rest of them, and not a musician. And it's not seen until way later on in the movie when his dad has already been arrested in jail, where he kind of flips his perspective on that a little bit. But we can dissect that later. Another great example is Mike again. Mike, he does end up pulling stunts in the movie, but before he even gets around to doing anything worth condemning, the other groups were judging him. And for example, like Rosita and Gunter, they were thinking something was off. They were all assuming that since Mike was a mouse, he was sneaky and up to no good. And that is a negative stereotype, and is based off of false conclusions, and to kind of use the theory as a baseline. It's managing to stop that. You have to address those in and out groups. You have to address the stereotyping. You have to be very aware of all of those things, and you have to, as a manager, try to spread awareness in a conscientious way so that the members of your team or your employees, in this specific example with this movie, it is the members of the performance, the group members, just all the performers. And in this scenario, I guess Buster is the manager. He needed to have been better about watching out for those stereotypes and not even partaking in them himself, and making sure that when they are judging somebody, it is not off of anything. When they're forming their attitude towards somebody, they need to make sure it is towards who they actually are and the things they actually do, and not based off of how they look or stereotypes about their upbringing or where they're from or anything like that.